All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so incredibly excited to be with my friend Nat Nat B. And we actually did a test run like 6 months ago of this podcast recording. And we decided we didn't want to run it. So here we are 6 months later. And I always love to start with just asking my guests to share a little bit about themselves so that the audience gets to know them better. So welcome, Nat Nat. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I'm like so excited to have you.
Thank you. And I want to take time out to thank you, David, for holding the space, for sharing this time with me. I am totally excited to be doing this in 2021, an
Yes.
abundant year. And I also want to take the moment to acknowledge all the work and dedication you've been putting into Heart of the Matter. It is
Thank you.
tremendous. People don't realize in the background how much work has to go into it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And thank you for holding a space for people to have innovation and to speak about things that kind of can be a little intimidating, or who can I speak to about this because I
Yes.
have these thoughts or feelings. So
Yes.
thank you for creating that space for people to be open and honest and see things in a different way and be curious to try new things, and not just always in the old narration. So thank you for bringing that energy. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm
Thank you.
super happy for you and excited. I'm cheering you on. So a little bit about me. I am a solo parent of three boys. One's 25. The others are twins that are soon to be 11 in a couple of weeks. I was working previously. I am retired as of 7 years ago, yet I am doing coaching through
Mhm,
my company called Lift Oneself.
mhm,
7 years ago, actually, in this time slot, if we want to say it, I fell really ill,
mm,
to the point where I was bedridden. I was going to the medical system and they couldn't find out what was wrong with me. I
mm,
kept going for several months actually to the ER and stuff. And then when it was in March, I was finally admitted and told I was possibly going to die,
mm,
because there were lesions in my brainstem and cerebellum.
mhm,
And I was admitted in the hospital for almost like 40 days. And I went through a batter of tests that
mhm,
you don't want to, it was like Frankenstein.
mm,
Yet through that, they still couldn't find a diagnosis. So I was let go without any answers and without any kind of protocol. It was just here, take some medication. We'll hope that something will go.
mhm,
Through discovering that, hindsight is 2020. um, what I knew, what I was going through then, I didn't really understand that my illness was helping to actualize me, to bring out the authentic part of me. It was a type of alchemy, and a real depth of understanding the nervous system, understanding the body, understanding what inner turmoils we go through, how powerful our thoughts are, what trauma is. It was a whole discovery of a lot of things that just opened up and released. So in that, it's been a navigation of inner work in the past 7 years. It's been a space of really accepting myself as a whole with a W,
mhm,
and sharing that space with other people, and letting people know it's, come back to just be you,
mhm.
whatever that is, whatever that energy
Yes.
is. That is what needs to be brought out here. Yet we get bombarded with so much conditioning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what else more
No,
to
that's beautiful.
explain about myself, but yeah,
That's
when
beautiful.
when I get that question, I always kind of, how do I answer that? Because
Yeah,
I
right.
don't go with the normal. I work here, I do this, and it's like I'm really not into those identities of roles, so it can get a little foreign for me to explain that stuff.
Yes, no, that was a beautiful explanation. And I wanted to actually share that you came into my awareness just recently because I did work with Natna as a coach through Lift Oneself. And I always recommend that people invest in themselves. So I've had several different coaches. And once the intuitive guidance comes, like, this is the person you should work with, I'm like, okay, great. So with Natna, I was like, yep, this is time. She's going to really be direct. She's going to hold me in love, but also not BS me. She's going to tell me the truth. And that's what I needed at that time. And I remember you saying, who does, you said a lot of things, but one thing that when you said about being you, you were just saying, you said to me, it's not about being that person or this person. Who does David want to be? Who does David want to be? And you encouraged me to go and get davidkrichards.com, the domain name. And that was like, it's so funny because I'm sitting here remembering that was literally one of the most petrifying things I ever did. And that was like a year and a half ago. And I think about my growth now and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's easy. No big deal. But at that moment, I needed your support to be like, just do it. Just go get the domain name. And I didn't realize how transformative that would be, because I said, oh, I'm going to put myself out there. Yeah. And I'm no longer going to be playing small or hiding behind other names or other people or other organizations, and really just say, oh, this is going to be about David K. Richards. So I appreciate you for that. And thank you there are so many things that Nat helped me with, but that was one that just came up right now. Cause I'm like, oh, we're kind of doing like a full circle where you encouraged me to do that. And interestingly enough, I am actually now going back to that website and kind of doing a whole rebrand. And I'm really focusing on David K. Richards and Heart of the Matter, but we're starting with David K. Richards. Yeah. So it's interesting that you're the mirror right now, because you told me to do that a year and a half ago. And then I just had the meeting before you was to go back to David K. Richards again. And I'm like, oh, see, Nat's soul is coming through and reminding me.
Yeah. And it was, I remember that fear too, because it's exposing ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's coming out of the conditioning that we have to wear this kind of mask persona to be navigating in the world, be it our careers, our role as a parent, husband, whatever it is. And we're so afraid to just be ourselves. Like, is that enough to just shine out? And will it have credentials or credibility? Will it be rejected? All that. Yeah. Once we come out of that exposure, we realize, oh, it's just for me not to disconnect with myself. Other people are going to come in and out no matter what. Yet it's for me not to disassociate, not to disconnect from me, or start acting very harsh with myself because I'm perceiving something on the outside as more important than my relationship with myself. And so doing that, I remember that the tremendous fear and what was coming up for you. And it was like, just do it. Like, nobody knows about it. It's just you to cross over that line.
Yes.
And even just to do that, people will think, and we'll have this intellectual, like, what's the problem? And it's like, you don't realize it's really tethered into a root of a fear that is deeply connected, that you haven't been able to look at, of the exposure of being yourself, because we've been so conditioned and told that us just being us isn't good enough. You have to be this, you have to do this, you don't know this, and all that. And we don't realize how much we've been crucified into that fear, that as soon as we want to expose that part, it's like, we got to protect that vulnerability. We have to shelter it, and not realizing that by doing that, we're making ourselves sick, and we're dimming our light. So, I'm very thankful.
Yes, no. And speaking of making yourself sick, so this is the next part of the story, is that I then in June, you had encouraged me to do that. And I knew I had an intuitive tug at that point. I knew that was the next step, but I needed the support. And it's really important that people hear, you always need the support, even though all your answers are within, and you are your own sovereign being, your human self needs the support. Yeah. So I needed the support from you to be like, hey, just do it. Just go for it. Like, what's a big, it's okay. Like, I'm here. If anything comes up, you can call me, the nervous system goes crazy. Nat's right here. And it did happen. So then I worked for a few months to build the website after I bought the domain name. And then I went to a conference in New York with educators from across the country. And I was trying to launch it for that conference, but I was in deep fear that I would be judged, that I would be seen as too woo-woo, that I would be seen as, this crazy guy who's, well, what's happened to the education reform? And he has an identity and a label, and what's happening? And so I went into massive fear. And then guess what happened the moment I got back from New York, when I launched it, when I made it live? It's the last time I was really sick. Yeah. 5 straight days. It was before COVID. Before COVID. So let's I know, I'm like,
make sure.
The collective is very heightened around this right now.
Yeah.
It was before COVID. I actually had remember that thing called the flu?
Yeah, remember that one?
So I got some version of the flu, or a really bad cold, but I was laid out for 5 days straight. And that's part of the process of awakening, is when you start to, kind of rewire your brain and your nervous system, as you know very well. So I want to hear I know you wanted to share stuff about mindset, and I would just love to hear how you've worked with your nervous system and your brain, and how you've kind of done the rewiring not to be taken down when you do something so simple as putting your name on a website and then all of a sudden you get sick for a week.
Yeah, you see, in that, what I know, because I was with you during that experience, we at times want to still put our round piece into a square space, and it's no longer fitting. So in there, you were still trying to keep the old with the new. And let me stay in my comfortable, safe space and just bring them what they need, not realizing this isn't where you're supposed to shine anymore. And whoever needs to listen will listen. Yet we, like a security blanket, I'm going to stay where I am because that's what I know and it's comfortable and all that. The other part, that's too unknown and it's too scary. And when we do that, and when we're open to awaken more and actualize, the nervous system takes a deep hit, and it feels like flu symptoms and total wipeout and burnout. Because it no longer can take the false narrative anymore. And it can no longer allow that energy to be put out in that way. Because it's like, you know what will invigorate us. So this isn't going to work anymore. Because you don't realize, because our brain processes like trillions of thoughts and memories and all this, we're not even aware of how fast the mechanism goes. And so by doing that and being in New York and all these things, you don't realize how fast things are going, and you're not in flow with your intuition. You're not in flow with just being yourself. You're actually very armored up and hit. So it wears you out. So when I felt ill 7 years ago, I had, to give you a little, I was sick in bed for 3 months. I had severe vertigo. I was throwing up. When I finally got admitted into the hospital, I hadn't had a bowel movement in 6 weeks. I hadn't eaten food in probably about 4 weeks. Liquids, rarely could keep them down. And severe migraines. Come to find out that my meninges were swollen. So it was the same thing as somebody having meningitis, the pain that I was going through. And in that, I can remember this one part where, because you're just stuck inside yourself. That's one thing, if I can impart to anybody right now, self-care is so important. Because once you have an illness, you are a prisoner in this body. And there's nowhere to go. And where I was, I couldn't be stimulated by anything. I was not able to watch TV. I was not able to read books because my eyes had actually moved positioning. So when you have an illness, it's a twofold. You're in it, it's excruciating and everything else, yet it brings you into the solitude to finally have to face yourself. And see the things that have been going on that you've been avoiding and overstimulating yourself not to see. So in the nervous system, when I got to see, it was all these memories that I was holding on to, and there's this like inner critic that we have. It's really harsh. And you don't realize that it's just been this ego that some people use, that has helped you to protect vulnerability as what you thought it to be. Your essence, what energy you were to bring out and be, and what invigorates you and keeps you fulfilled. So that nervous system, understanding it, it's like, oh, this thing is a really strong component, because the nervous system has one function, and it's not to die, because that's what keeps this body functioning. And so depending on how you perceive things, you're taking hits that you're always dying. So say if you went bankrupt, that's a hit to your character, your financial security, all these things. So it feels like a death. And so it runs a whole rampant through your system.
No, that's what happened to me during that's precisely this story is coming up for a reason, because it's going to help like explain what you went through with the nervous system. But the expansion felt so massive because I knew I was really doing a soul expansion.
Yeah.
But the nervous system and the personality jacket and the ego was like, hey, what's going on here? We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. Like, you're literally going to kill yourself. And then because it's a perfect storm and the universe is so precise, we had a 7 a.m. meeting in New York, but that's 3 hours ahead for us.
Yeah.
So I had to get ready, get up and get to the place by 3:30 California time. It was like, I was up in the middle of the night. I had to get up at 2 a.m. my time. And then of course I had all this anxiety that I wouldn't get enough sleep. And so I think I slept like a 1 to 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't sleep. So I'm going back to the self-care. I didn't sleep. And then I really, like you said, I was wanting to stay comfortable, but also expand. And there was such a disconnect that the nervous system literally was so freaked out that everything shut down. And this was exactly what you're saying. So, but sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, it's good that because I also am remembering, because you got to also remember the dynamic of New York. If anybody's not ever gone to New York, the dynamic of New York, it's a very carefree, like you'll see so many different dynamic. And if you want to be accepted, go to New York because you get everything, yet you're also apprehensive because there is violence. There is a type of aggression, and it's a nightlife always going constant. Yes. So it's like you already are like, whoo, okay. And then your own experience. So that was like, what was needed to really open you up in such a significant way. And I remember you walking too, but seeing the beauty in New York and seeing the different dynamics and listening to the music and people dancing and stuff. So, and you were starting to recognize like what matters to me. Whereas I'm going to this big conference, yet do I really want to be in that kind of space anymore? So it was a beautiful unfolding for you. So back to the nervous system, it's like, we have to understand how we've been conditioned and programmed. Everybody, it's in the childhood, and everybody has it differently. I know what my programming is from seeing deeply. I was compared a lot. I was an only child. So I don't have the reference of having siblings. So having twins, being a solo parent to twins, whew, let me tell you, I'm like, I'm always second guessing and doubting, and other people are like, that's normal. I'm like, I don't think that's normal. Yet I don't have a reference of siblings. I have cousins, yet cousins are still not the same dynamic of siblings. So in that, where was I now? Sorry, I lost my thought.
No, just your programming. Your programming.
Yeah, programming. So in there, I know I'm automatically comparison. So that's when so when I get reactive, when I start seeing myself compare, like, oh, well, look what they're doing and everything else, I automatically know that that's a trigger for me. So I know come out, because the nervous system's going to take control and try and distort what really is going on and not see all of the reality. It's just going to start to narrow in because it feels threatened. And so once you understand yourself and you understand what your triggers are because of how you've been programmed to think you're not good enough, because you were instilled with this kind of belief and conditioning, then you understand how all of a sudden when the nervous system's going to react in a way. And once you understand that, then it becomes okay. So I can go into this nervous system. I don't have to let it drag me around and then all of a sudden wake up later and be like, oh, what happened? Because that's what really happens is when people are like, that was so out of character, the nervous system hijacked and just took over with old conditioning and programming. And it can get pretty aggressive at times because it's a fight or flight. So unless you can just, and sometimes you have to come out like the lion or whatnot. So once you understand that, and you can, that's why meditation is so, I'm so thankful for learning that. Because it allows you to come back into the breath. Because the nervous system just narrows everything off and it comes very dualistic, all or nothing, this and that. It doesn't know how to go beyond that. And so once you go into that, you understand, okay, this is a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your mindset is very important, because then you have to see that I have to make choices of how long do I want to stay in this reaction?
Mm-hmm.
How long do I want to feel like this? And don't, when I'm saying this, I know some people might be like, what are you like? And maybe some colorful words, because nobody wants to hear that they're empowered with these choices. Like it was somebody else that did something to me. That is true with a small t to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, no matter where you are, how you feel internally, you have immense power over that.
Yeah.
And it's taking the practices of coming back and being like, I'm in reaction. Let me come out of this mind state, because it's a state
Mm-hmm.
of mind, so not
Yes.
mind state of mind.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, come back into calming the nervous system down
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing I'm overreacting because this feels a certain way. And that's why it's important to feel, because a lot of us have been so cut off from feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We have suppressed feeling, that we have so much things stored in that they all come up at the same time and you have no idea what's going on. That's why a lot of people are like, I don't know what's going on, because you don't know how to feel anymore. There's so much that got jammed in that when it comes up, it's just overload. So that's why it's so important to let your energies flow through, because if you study psychology and neuroscience and whatnot, you understand that an emotion is created by a thought, and that
Mm-hmm.
thought is stemming from a belief system.
Right.
So, you know, where some people may cry over something and another person won't, it all depends on how they were programmed with the conditioning of a belief of how they're going to define this and how
Okay,
they're
yeah.
going to interact with it.
Now, I want to break this down because I did my last solo episode on this, and Julie, my lovely wife, was editing it, and she's like, you said something about somebody seeing a red shirt and you think you're going to get punched in the face. She's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But it was exactly, she's like, and you didn't elaborate. So we're finding some fun things as we're working together. But what I wanted to break down is what I was getting at, which I didn't elaborate. So let me do it now, is you have a program that's running subconsciously, right? Somebody with a red shirt when you were in 7th grade punched you in the face. So you turn and you're walking down the street and you see a red shirt. So you're not aware of the fact that your program starts to run, which is nervous system says, I'm going to die. I'm going to be punched in the face and I'm going to feel small. I'm going to feel, so your feelings are bad, your physical, it's a trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you see that red shirt, if you're not consciously aware, or you're not, you will start to run that program.
Mm-hmm.
So to break it down, what you were just saying is like, you have a thought or a feeling, which is an emotion, which is energy in motion, that's tied to a belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And the belief system is tied to a program, typically from your inner child wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Is this all making sense? Am I breaking it down the
Yeah.
way you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So in that, like, say for the instance, the memory you're saying where a child hits you, okay, you're also not looking at the part of vengeance because you weren't able to stand up for yourself. Now you want to go attack this person.
Right.
And you didn't allow yourself to use your voice in a way, and then you get angry with yourself. Because in these memories too, you have to look at, you were part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you showed up, it may not have been the way that you could have, yet you also have to have the grace to understand you didn't have the capabilities of being able to show up in the way that you wanted to. And you cannot bring this awareness to attack that awareness.
Yes.
Because seeing it from these eyes to when that was, it's two different ways. So don't go attacking it.
But the nervous system doesn't know the difference, correct?
No.
Past, present, future. So it doesn't know that the red shirt was when you were 7 or 13 and you were, you didn't have the capacity at that time. Adult Nat, adult David's like, oh, if someone comes with a red shirt and they're going to try and punch me, I have a lot of tools now and I could stand up, I could walk away, all those kind of things. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It doesn't.
No.
Right. Okay.
And that's why it's important to go into that memory, feel that memory, see it with a bird's eye view, see it from the other person's perspective, so you can release the emotions that were attached to that memory, so that you don't become reactive.
Yes.
A lot of people just have the memory and they get all, and then they shut off that feeling. They don't let it pass through.
Right. Right.
And so then when,
Mm-hmm.
and so when every time they talk about it after, they get triggered with it, like, oh,
Yes.
I'm a victim. It's because you didn't feel your way through it because it felt too intense for you.
Yes. Yes.
Because it when you go into the memory, it will feel like you're reliving it again, which is what you want, to release the whole narration that you interpreted the memory as.
Yes. Yes.
And to let go of that narration. And so, and sometimes it takes a few times to go and get the resonance out and be like, oh, I'm okay with this now. Yeah. And that's why sometimes, you know, where you would be reactive with red, when you've gone through that process after, it's like, there's nothing. Well, why is there not nothing? How come? And it's like, you let go of the suppression of the energy. Right. It's no longer stuck in there that you're reliving that memory, because the emotional charge is no longer there.
And this is
it's not shocking you.
Right. This is the rewiring of the brain, in that your nervous system is just running on whatever, you know,
memories,
right? So it's like, and it's supposed to do that, the amygdala and the nervous system, because it's keeping you safe from, you know, the caveman days or whatever, when you actually could get clubbed and killed by a lion or whatever. And so, but if you can rewire that, you're actually not in danger anymore when you see a red shirt, but your brain has been wired to convince you that you are.
Yeah.
So by going in there, and I've done a lot of hypnotherapy recently, based on my childhood trauma, and really going, and I joked before saying that I spent a lot of time in the operating room, you know, before we recorded, but I have spent a lot of time with Janet Philbin and doing the inner child hypnotherapy, because that's exactly what we do. We go right into, in your deep meditation, in your hypnosis state, you're able to go deep into a subconscious memory that has, it's crazy, because it's literally, there's been ones that have been running programs for me for 37 years, since I was 8 years old. And a lot of people in 2020 are starting to identify these massive programs in their life. And you're like, wait, why am I letting this unconscious, subconscious program literally run 70% of my day? Because every day I think that I'm in danger, or someone's gonna be mean to me, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. And it's like, that is, and when you've had childhood trauma like you and I have, there's a lot of stuff to examine, because there's a lot of programs that are running that are really intense. It's, I mean, everyone has the trauma, but I'm talking about like when you've gone through the abuse and things we've gone through, like it's pretty
because the world feels unsafe.
Yes.
Where other people had traumas and the world didn't feel so hostile. Whereas for us, it was, we were left on our own without any kind of devices, anybody to lead us in a way. And the world felt very hostile, because then your inner critic gets very harsh with yourself.
Yes, yes.
Because if you wouldn't have did this, these people wouldn't have, and you don't realize the other person's impact. You're not seeing the other person's story, because as a child, we're all narcissists. It's all self-absorbed, and it's only our little world. So a lot of times, there's very rare. I know, you know, Shefali has spoken about hers when she was younger, that she could have the insight that, no, this is this other person. And some of us do have that, yet the majority internalize that it was something that we did wrong.
Yes.
And we called that on. And if we would have just, and it's like, we're not seeing the full big picture. And that's why going into the nervous system and going into those memories and uncharging that emotional charge brings that liberation. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can see the world and I can breathe. Like, I'm no longer holding my breath. I'm no longer afraid to be joyful. I'm no longer afraid to feel the abundance. I'm not always on edge. And it's a huge thing. And it's a huge thing that people are like, wow, I didn't need medication or all these kind of different things. It was that I had to feel the intensity of feeling rather than like numbing and suppressing. I just really had to feel the intensity of what it felt like and be there for myself and bring a kind and gentle narrative in there, where we've kind of pushed through it and be harsh and go through. And, you know, there's sometimes we have to be direct and catch ourselves when we're procrastinating and in fear, because a lot of it is fear, because we're afraid of what the unknown is. What trauma does also too is because we have experienced an outcome of pain. So anytime that comes, we think we know the outcome is going to be pain.
Yes.
All the time, 100%. It's going to, and we don't know that until, so a lot of it, we just sabotage and just cut it right off because I know I'm a fortune teller. I know the outcome. It's like, you don't though, until you allow, and there may be certain things, yet you don't know. And that's the whole thing of reminding your nervous system and taking over it. And because, the nervous system is like a stallion. It has immense power, immense. And when you know how to ride it, not try to tame it, because you can't, it's very rare you can tame a stallion. You don't want to tame a stallion and its energy. You want to be able to ride it and ride it in a natural way, and then come off it when you don't need to, because you don't want to be in that. So you want to be able to ride that immense energy. And a lot of people aren't aware of what's going on in there. So once and meditation is a beautiful space, because meditation is a space where you observe. You don't try to analyze it. You don't try to poke at it. You just observe what's going on. And you get to see, wow, I understand that there's so much I don't know. And I thought I knew everything, and I'm limiting myself by hurting myself or suppressing and stuff like that. So once you use the meditation and you open up, it opens up so many other dimensions and places of the story. And so then you interact with life in such a different way that I don't know. And I'm safe in the I don't know. Yet I'm curious to find out and experience some more.
And it brings you into the present moment, meaning like when you're in meditation, you're in the present moment. So when we were working together, you would irritate me in this way. And I've told you this already, that you would be so attuned to when I was suppressing an emotion that you'd be like, very calmly, and be like, David, you're activated, right? And you're walking around. I'm like, she caught me again. But what you helped me do, is that when you've gone through the trauma, like you said, then you get really good, especially for people like us that are very heart-centered and empathic, you get really good at suppressing everything down, because the little child's like, oh, well, if I'm open and free and empathic and intuitive, then, bad things are going to happen and the pain's going to come. So you get really, really good at shutting it all down and suppressing it. And so when you and I were working together, it would be like, you'd ask me a little question, and it'd be like the red shirt. It'd be a little tiny subtle question you'd ask me, because you were probably intuitively finding there was some good juice there, some good nectar to go into. And then I would just kind of start walking and moving, and it was very subtle. But what you taught me was that, like, when you are not good at accessing your emotions, like a lot of men, but a lot of people in general, then you actually you're not aware of when you're triggered or activated. And like, you're aware when you're upset because somebody, called you a bad name, but you're not aware that, like, just by one person asking you a simple question or seeing the red shirt example, like, you're not aware that that's a trigger for you or an activation. So then you run the cycle of shut down the emotion, push it down, run the program, and you're just going through your life with your nervous system on overdrive. And the meditation brings you to present moment, so that when you and I were working together, I could really just take a deep breath. And then the nervous system, just from doing that, the nervous system's like, oh, maybe we're not going to die. And then I could just look at what is actually activating me right now, and what's the emotion that I'm feeling. And the emotional intelligence people talk about how the simple act of labeling it is really, really effective, because then you can say, oh, that's sadness. Oh, when Nat asked me the question, it reminded me of when I was 8 years old and there was nobody in the house, and I didn't know what to eat for dinner. And so that little question made me feel like I'm in trouble again. And so instead of running away from it, you helped me be able to really access those emotions and then just feel them, go into a meditative state, get into your present moment, and then they can pass within like 90 seconds. They've done research on this. But you actually have to bring awareness to that and be in the present moment. Not have to, but it helps if you can do that, because then you can just free that energy from being stuck in your body for all these years.
And it's the power of acknowledgement. We don't acknowledge, and once you took that breath and we can see, it's like, I acknowledge that this is here. And then we go through all the emotions, and then at the deep core, we find out it's fear. Yet it has different ways to look and how that energy is and stuff.
Right.
And we have not been given the authority to acknowledge things, because you're supposed to be something other than that, because that is a form of weakness to acknowledge something. And a lot of people don't realize that acknowledging doesn't mean identifying. It's just you're showing something. Like if you're lost, you have to find out where you are on the map to be able to find where you have to go. And that's just acknowledging. Yet a lot of people think, well, if I say this, then all of a sudden I am this thing. And a lot of people are forgetting to put the word feel. Like I am feeling sad, not I am sad. I am feeling sad. I am feeling scared. I am feeling this. And we get fixated in a solid, this is my identity. And we forget this too shall pass. But those 90 seconds, every second feels like an hour. So it's like an intense, it's intense. And sometimes we have to jump out of it because it's just, whoa, can only take that much of it and then every time we go in, the longer we can stretch it out, the less intensity it has. And then we're not in such big reactions for long periods of time. And it takes practice. And it's not to dive in that all of a sudden I know my trigger is this. It's practicing in the little things, because the small actions create the bigger parts where you can finally take on the intensity. Yet, because we get so conditioned that we want to be so perfect and get over with it, we don't realize we go into a kind of sabotage by trying to tackle it all right away. And it's like, you're going to do more damage that way, because then you're going to be really intimidated to really have to access any of this. And you're kind of proving the narrative like, well, look, it doesn't work. I can't do this and it's not for me and all that. It's like you're proving yourself wrong, because we are so habituated not to put in the work of feeling. So we have to be careful of that narrative of we just will dim ourselves and want to, prove that narrative of, well, look, you're not able to do this. And it's like, you haven't even given yourself the little bites to try to achieve this. You've gone too big of a scale. And those are the things that, like you said, a coach helps. Having somebody have a bird's eye view and that can hold that space that, okay, you're activated right now. Let's talk. Let's, you got to feel it out. And then you can start to figure out, like open up that memory of, well, this is how I felt. And now this is why I do this part, or that's why I do this part. Cause I think I'm still this aspect, and I haven't even allowed myself to see what was the other part. I didn't even, and then you get to see it in such a different way, and you interact with yourself in such a different way. And movement is very important. Sometimes, we'll talk about meditation and all that, yet meditation is to interact with life. We do the sitting practice at the beginning to get used to using our mind in a different way to be able to focus and stuff like that. Yet meditation isn't to arrive somewhere. It isn't to run away from somewhere. It isn't to get rid of something. It's actually to drop into the moment and to let go of whatever narration you have, so that you can see all of it and not just your limited part that's just all that. So meditation, when you use it in your everyday life and you see, wait a minute, let me slow it down and see things, and let me feel what's going on inside that might be putting a veil over how I'm interpreting what's going on externally from me and how the interaction with somebody else. And once we start to do that, life just opens up in such magical ways. Like we were just talking off how you set yourself up with certain things, and look at what has manifested in the year of 2020. That would be such a doom year. How many great things have happened for you.
Right.
And people would be like, oh, yet they won't see the work that you did previously.
Right.
Because everybody just, oh my gosh, look at all these big, and it's like, oh, you have no idea what kind of trench work I went through though, and what kind of actions I went through and decisions and stuff like that. And this is the beautiful rewards that all of a sudden you start to change the narration of how you're interacting with life and how you're perceiving it. And it doesn't mean challenges don't come in. Like there's always challenges,
of course,
all the time. It's how we interact with it and how we ask ourselves, how long am I going to stay in this reaction for?
Yes.
Because it's a state of mind. And once we take the decision that I am in control of my mindset,
yes,
then you take the empowerment of how are you going to come out of this?
Yes.
And what are you, because a lot of times people want to be like, oh, I got the power of the mind. Yet when push comes to shove, then they don't want that. So they want to play 1 foot in, 1 foot out and use it whenever they can feel like they want to use it, and then use the blame game.
Yeah.
And blaming something externally, there's no power in that. It feels good.
Yeah.
It's like junk food, yet you cannot control anything that's outside of you. Be a parent. We know we can't control the little humans. So
exactly.
Go ahead, go. You can, and if you're using fear, then yes, it's a misconceived control, yet long term, that will come back. So when we let go of the narration, then we have a really different relationship with the nervous system. And we don't chastise it and get angry with it. Because a lot of times we're getting angry with, oh, you're being that, and we're not even taking a moment to understand why the programming is the way it is and how it's feeling. Okay. So coming back into, like, with the illness, it was my gift that actualized me.
Yes.
Yet, when you're in it, you don't want to hear any of that.
No.
I don't want to hear it. Sometimes when I'm going through my stuff still now, I don't want to hear any of that. My aunt, the other day, I was talking to her and she's like, I like to listen to you on Facebook, but sometimes your positivity, I'm like, it makes you want to puke. She's like, I just have to turn it off because it's just too, how do you do that? Like, how do you? And I'm like, it's a choice. It's not that I don't, like, I went walking this morning, I had pain in my leg, all this, yet I know to embrace it and to be there with it, not push it away. Because if I push it away, I'm not going to be here present in the moment.
Yes.
And I can move through it. And then all of a sudden a new thing comes up. Yet that's what my illness allowed me to see, to accept all of it and to really ask, what are you here for? Like, why are you here? Pain is a significant teacher, huge. Yet it's the teacher that we tend to not like the most, but it's the most impactful, and it's the one that brings the most gifts and gems and treasures. Because in that, it stretches your empathy to no longer belittle somebody else when they're going through something.
Exactly.
Because you can deeply listen to somebody else and understand where they are, and also understand where they can be.
Yes. And Nat, you talked about the meditation, and it helped me realize that as you were talking, I am now in a meditative state a lot throughout the day, because I do my walks in the morning, I do my gym work, I do my sitting meditation, like I have my whole process. And by doing that, so Shefali taught me to meditate, it feels like 72 years ago, but I think it was only 2 years ago. Whenever your manifestation started or whatever. So January of 2018, so 3 years ago. And so then since that time, I've pretty much done every single day, 5 minutes to 1 hour, 20 minutes here and there, every day for 3 years. And that's allowed me to, like you were saying, understand the feeling and the flow that you can get into. So now when I'm sitting here talking to you, the mind is not going on 5 million thoughts. I'm not thinking about when I'm going to hang up. I'm not thinking about, the dot behind you or my 2 black doors. None of those things are happening. I'm just literally dropped into this present moment with you. And you were saying earlier something about like the choice about reaction. And what I'm finding is there's not even a choice anymore, because I'm starting to be in the present moment. And I guess there are choices that come through, but it's like once I can really ground myself in the present moment, then the intuitive guidance comes so clearly that it's like the choiceless choice. It's like, just follow the intuition. And then once I do that, then it's, then I'm able to see, like you were saying, just the small steps and just trusting and surrendering and going into the unknown. And knowing that every single thing is here for your awakening.
Yeah.
The experience I had in New York, your illness, those are the kind of things like I really, and you used to always say this to me, you're like, oh, that's a great story. You can put that in your book. Remember that for the stage, remember that for the book, you know, when you're, and so I know that these things are happening just to help me wake up even more, and that the universe is quite gentle and will only kind of hand to you what you can handle in the moment for the most part, So it's been, the universe has been very gentle with me thus far. Let's keep it that way. I don't want to jinx anything. Just kidding. No, but you know, and so I've been able to really just ground in the present moment. And then every single lesson I need is right there in front of me. And if I don't look at it as like, oh, this is good, this is bad, oh, this is that, this is, and it's just not let the, like go from the heart to the mind instead of from the mind down, then the mind becomes the powerful computer instead of the egoic mind that takes you down. I like Michael Beckwith calls it the divine mind. And you're tapping into the divine mind instead of the egoic mind. And then when the thoughts come in that you know are tied to a program, like, oh my gosh, I just quit my job, or I'm about to quit my job. And all the thoughts come in like, you're a loser, you're an idiot, how are you going to pay the bills? You're so stupid, you're so irresponsible. Like you said, you're really gentle. You don't run away from them. You feel into them. And then you just send them a bunch of love. It's really just your inner child saying like, hey, I kept you safe for all these years by putting these programs and these thoughts out to you. Like, if you hadn't listened to me, a lot of bad things would have happened to you. So you're like, oh, thank you so much for worrying that if I quit my job, that we're going to live in the gutter. Yeah. We're okay now. We're really okay now. But it's like acknowledging, like you said, letting it come through you and always just coming back to the present moment, which meditation, as Nat said, is literally what changed my life, because it allows you to start to understand what it feels like to be in a meditative state. And you don't have to be sitting down and closing your eyes. No. Now, when I'm walking or when I'm sitting here, I just get some sort of, I get 7 messages. I'm like, oh, I'll write them down later. And then if intuition tells me to act on them, I will. And maybe this was something that's supposed to happen 10 years from now. So I'm not going to overdo it, but we'll just kind of wait and see what the guidance tells me to do in this moment.
Yeah. Because it's meditation also, like that is a form of understanding your nervous system. Because once we meditate, we come to see how much we're bombarded with thoughts and we think that they're true. Yes. We get hooked into them. And meditation allows you just to see the stream of thoughts and realizing I don't need to fish in that stream. Yes. Like none of that stuff is what I need to use. And like you said, we go on autopilot with all these kind of different narrations. And that's why it's very important, not only what we consume in our mouth, yet what we consume visually, what we consume auditory. And so, with the new era of social media and different types of news and entertainment, we have to realize more and more we're being bombarded by so many things that can get primed into our nervous system, and it's activating it. Yes. So we have to be aware of how are we going to move forward as a civilization with this. And it's not to evilize technology neither, because I really, that's again, this dualistic mind of all or nothing. I enjoy my modern life of a fridge and being able to talk to somebody in California when I'm in cold Canada right now.
Exactly.
It's also understanding what we are allowing, and that is our responsibility. Yes. And what we are consuming, and us as a society too, to what are we going to do for the boundaries? What are we going to create for a next generation? Yes. Because what is happening is people are becoming more and more aware of what a nervous system is and what it is requiring and what it can do. Yeah. And we have to realize when it feels threatened or under attack, it can do some very violent things. Yes. And some very cruel things. And so we have to now take responsibility for our own. So, like Gandhi said, the change you're looking for, you have to be that change. Everybody's looking for this kind of savior, which religion has given this, in every kind of religious space, there's this one savior that comes, and it's like, there's no longer that. It's you have to be the change and then show up in the world. And
Yes.
when we all do that, there's the change.
Yes.
Yet everybody's waiting for somebody else to do it. And because if I go do it, why am I going to do all the work and you're not going to do anything? Yet
Yes.
you don't realize the liberation for yourself. And how that once you get really intimate with feeling good and how it feels,
Yeah.
it's a total, you don't want to lose that power. You don't
Yeah.
want to lose that feeling good. And the world, you get bombarded with a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
Yet you have to understand what your nervous system, how sensitive it is and how strong and robust it is.
Yes.
And, as much as people want to talk about the trauma and the vagus nerve, a lot of people don't talk about the resilience. Like you were just explaining about the inner child, like you had to make these choices and these decisions
Yeah.
because that was the way to protect yourself.
Yes.
And that is a resilience that we have to amplify also. That, yes, there's certain situations and, there's certain experiences that people have to go through because they're the testament to show us that, yes, even though I went through this, like, today is MLK Jr.'s birthday.
Yep.
And what a testament of a life of no matter what violence came to him, he still came with nonviolence.
Yes.
I cannot say that for my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we do have somebody that has created it. So if one human has done it, that means we all have the capabilities of doing it. It's just we haven't chosen to do that.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
what we're forgetting, that if one human has done it, that means we all have. It's just we haven't had the elements or the power to tap into that.
Yes.
So it's really it's really important to find people that will reinforce the love for you,
Yes.
that will encourage you,
Yes.
that will mirror things,
Yes.
and that will give you the empowerment to believe in yourself. And the
Yes.
biggest thing too is to trust yourself.
Yes.
The nervous system, you have to trust yourself and you have to trust to make mistakes.
Yes.
That's what learning is.
Exactly. And
Yeah, we were like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're bringing up is this shift. So the whole reason I wanted to start this podcast, A Conscious Way Forward, the reason I started Heart of the Matter, the reason I started David K. Richards, it's all the same reason, which is to really help people wake up.
Yeah.
And not like I'm going to help them wake up necessarily, like I'm not trying to fix or change them, but rather I'm going to continue to just embody this work that you and I are doing in everyday life, all day, every day, with the children, with the male person, with the grocery store clerk, with the, the school, everything, just embody it. And the hope and the wish, or just, again, it is a hope or a wish. It's a vision, it's a hope or a wish that by me doing that, by me constantly going back within, that'll start to ripple out. And that somebody will hear one word that you said today, and they'll be like, I hadn't thought about it that way. And it'll start their process of awakening. Or somebody who's deep in the awakening process will be like, oh, wow, yeah, that's what I needed to hear in this moment to go back to my meditation practice or to whatever it might have been. Or, oh, I hadn't thought about the inner child and the nervous system as much. I haven't thought about that for a year or two. And that these conversations will help people, and that we start to create this co-create this new earth together, so that we're not looking for institutions and the CEO, or we're not looking for the religions that tell us that everything's on the outside and we sit back here and we wait for someone to save us. That literally we are the sovereign beings and we have power at every single moment to co-create our reality. And the other thing you brought up is a perfect time for me to actually talk about the Inner Sangha, which we're running again, because you talked about support and people encouraging you. And, the entrepreneurial world talks about how you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I heard that 5 years ago, and I started doing an audit, and I was like, this person complains and is negative all the time. This person is always a victim. This person is my energy vampire because I'm an empath. Oh, this person's wonderful. Oh, and this person is, and I'm like, 4 out of the 5 are I'm in the average of the 4 out of the 5. So I'm negative, I'm complaining, I'm a victim. So what we found in the Inner Sangha is once we got, a group of 13 people together that are talking this language, doing this work, is that the encouragement and the support for the human self is beautiful. And then you get all of the messages and the waking up from the soul when you're around all these beautiful people that are doing the work. And so I just appreciate you giving me a good reason to plug the new program.
Yes, of course. And you're supposed to. This is a thing too. It's showing up 100% for yourself.
Yes.
We haven't been taught that. We haven't been taught that. And when you show up 100% for yourself, you can be the presence for other people.
Yeah.
Yet we've been going on the outside trying to get in.
Yes.
Forgetting it's an inside job that goes out.
Yes.
And
yes.
so we're not showing up 100% for ourselves. And then we get so exhausted and depleted because we think by doing all these other things, then we're going to get our good deed or good
Yes.
narration or story or whatnot. When it's like, well, you need to show up 100% for yourself, because
Yes.
you cannot give what you haven't received from yourself.
Yes.
And you think you're doing all these things, yet really, what's the energy underneath it? Is it really, because that's what it is. It's the energy that we share with each other.
Absolutely.
And how we feel. And I want to piggyback and come back to how you said hope and wish for the heart of the matter.
Yes.
It's actually your desire.
Yes.
And you're no longer daydreaming with your desire. You're actually living your dream.
Mm-hmm.
Because before to do David K. Richards and all that, it was daydreaming with your desire.
Yeah.
Yet to actually put it into motion, then that was living your dream, and that was too scary to be doing. Mm-hmm. I'd rather just daydream with my desire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To actually live in my dream and to co-create and manifest with desire, that seems like that's not my realm. I'm not capable of doing this. And it cannot be that simple. Yeah. It has to be overcomplicated. It cannot come as simply as that. And it's like, and to change that narration, it's an intense work through the nervous system. Yeah. So you get depleted and you get fatigued. Like a lot of people, after they do my sessions, they're like, I need to go to sleep. And I'm like, yeah, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do. You need to sleep, because it was an intensity of, you see how much you've been BSing yourself. You see where you haven't allowed, like my ability is to calm the nervous system. Yes, and for you to see things that you've been so afraid to see or to be honest about. And then you like see it. And then once we see something, we can't unsee it. So even though you may go, it goes under the veil again, you're like, it's in there because I saw it. So let me connect into that. And then once you connect, you keep going and stuff like that. Yeah. And like you said, we have to then take the inventory of who are we associating with, and what are they amplifying in me? Yeah, exactly. Are they amplifying the drama, the wanting to complain, the this, or am I getting? And when I say encouragement also means to call people out. Yes. A lot of time people think encouragement just, they're always going to agree. And it's like, if people are always agreeing with me, then they're too afraid to call me out on truth, because truth can be brutal at times, and we don't see what we're doing to ourselves. Yeah. And encouragement means like, you can do a bit better.
And you can go. Too. You don't have to be mean about it. You can just say it in the way that they can hear it. And that's actually the most important part, is saying it in the way they can hear it.
And you can just say it and just drop it there. You don't have to keep like with love means I just said it, but I'm not going to shove it down your throat.
No.
Because if you're not ready to hear it, then I have to respect that space. Yes. Yet for me not to say it to you, then how am I holding truth?
Exactly.
I have to show you something that you're not able to see and that you don't want to accept. And that's okay. And I'll meet you exactly where you are. Yet I'm not going to lower my standards to make you feel pacified in that.
Right.
So encouragement means like, we're going to talk about it. We're going to let you vent and say what there is.
Yes.
And allow you to show us what are the solutions.
Yes.
Tell me what your solutions are. Because we can puke all we want, yet where are the solutions? What are we going to gather from this? And a lot of times people want to run to fix somebody when all a person needs is some deep listening to be able to share, to sort it out, and then all of a sudden come to their own solution. And it's like, thanks.
Well, because you're the mirror, right? Yeah. And so if you're doing the work on yourself, they don't need to be fixed. They just need to look at you in the mirror. And so you help me come get clarity on the other desire that I have, that I want to go from desire or from daydream to living the dream, which I love that. I love that from daydreaming the desire to living the dream. And I really feel like part of my soul contract is to invigorate others. So when I was doing the Michael Beckwith New Year visioning process, it's like a 2.5 hour process. And it was like half of it was meditation. And I got 3 concepts. Number 1 was to ground myself as the pillar of love. Like there's a beam from the top going down, and it's just grounding as a pillar of love. So that when I'm in this energy as the mirror, people can then feel safe and calm. Yeah. And the second concept was to be a creative catalyst. So that when I'm creating a calm and safe space and holding that space for them and being the bridge, then they can actually catalyze their creativity. Because what is creativity? It's a reflection of the source. It's the reflection of your highest self. So then you're like, oh, I've always wanted to do this mealtime program planning. For moms, I've always wanted to fill in the blank. And then once they have that momentum to go from daydreaming to living the dream, then this is going to be one of my memes now, Nat. I'll have to put your name next to it. It's so beautiful. Then they can actually see the world through the prism. So I got the visual of a prism, and it's like, now you can see the different angles and the different lights of when you're not seeing things in duality and black and white. And you can be like, oh, so that is my desire, that I want to start living this dream, that when I interact with people, that just by me holding the space, they're like, okay, I'm going to go start this project. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Because that is how we shift the paradigm. That's how we co-create the new earth, not through waiting for some guy at the top of the CEO chain to tell us how we're supposed to do next steps, and not waiting for a formula, not waiting for the recipe that was written in 1940. Like, it's literally just, what are all the new ways you can show up as your most authentic version of yourself? And then that's how 10 years from now, we're gonna look back and be like, wait, why did we ever think that the public school system should be the way it was? Isn't that hilarious? The way we used to put them in the factories all day, every day. Oh, wasn't it funny with the healthcare system, how it was really robotic and beautiful people within the system, just like schools, but yet they're operating in this robotic system. And it's like, oh, how did that all change? Oh, it was like just a group of people that kept showing up as their authentic self and going within and being the ripple effect.
Yeah, beautiful. It's fascinating once we allow ourselves to let innovation come in and not just keep repeating and being open to, it's really holding the space of being open and willing to see it differently.
Yes.
And
that's
that
the
can feel
that I got. Yeah.
So intimidating.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, this has always kept us safe, yet it's like, this is the way we've always done it. So and it's like, yet if this is the way you've always done it, are you open to seeing that possibly it was wrong?
Yeah, right. Welcome to 2020.
A lot of people are like, no, we don't question. It's like, like 2020 got to show people how strung they were on traditions.
Yeah.
And couldn't even let go of it once.
Yeah.
Because all the traditions that happened in 1 year, you weren't even able to let go of it just for 1 year.
1 year, yeah.
And it sent you bonkers, and you didn't even realize that I could create something different. Mm-hmm. I can create my own new way. But it was like, no, it has to look like this because tradition has to, and it's like, there's no evolution in that. Mm-hmm. And because we're, under a pandemic, trying to, keep humanity evolving, you're going to say you can't adapt.
Right.
And so we got to see where there's a lot of the insanity that we subscribe to, that we think, well, it has to just be like this. And it's like, you're not even allowing yourself to adapt. And we're not saying it's always going to be like this. It was just once.
1 year.
1 year.
Once. Time, yeah.
One time. Like there were several one times, but it was only for 1 year to do this one time.
Yeah.
And look at, but let me take that out. The beauty of this is the things that were impossible. People can't work from home.
Yeah.
Kids can't be at home.
Yeah.
Kids can't play. Parents can't, this, that, and all this stuff. And it's like, here in Canada, we have our bank representatives working from home, accessing a highly secure system.
Yeah.
Our government employees are accessing a highly secure system.
Right.
All these things that could not possibly happen, but now all of a sudden it can. And now you're not able to go back to, well, no, we have to, it's like, it's already been here now. So you cannot give us the Kool-Aid of this is impossible.
Exactly.
And so now that we've gotten that part out, it's like, what else can we create to simplify this? Mm-hmm. And I truly believe economy is going to be changed into what we considered as volunteer work will be paid work. And that's how we'll have to reconstruct a new economy and a new workforce of coming back in and really understanding what community is,
Mhm.
understanding how we're to be humanitarian to each other.
Yes. Yes.
To like, we're in a first world country in North America where there's like the highest rate of employment, and you have these billionaires and trillionaires and all that, and look at the rate of poverty and homelessness.
Right.
And mental health, all that is really a separation of self and not knowing about self-care,
Yeah.
not knowing
Absolutely.
how to love yourself,
Yeah.
and a big impact on the nervous system.
Yeah.
And now more and more, like, for us to turn a blind eye and be like, it's not my problem. It's like,
Yeah.
it is our problem.
Yeah.
And there is a choice where there's some people that are making a choice, and you have to respect that. Yet a huge amount of it isn't choice. It's this little game that's been put in, that we all have to see, like, what, we can recreate something different, and we don't have to wait for the higher ups to give us that permission, that we can come back and be like, what, let's work together. Let's create a place that we feel harmonious, that we're responsible, and there's play. We're forgetting to play. And that is like, play is about movement. Nothing can manifest without movement. Stagnant, nothing grows when it's stagnant. You need movement, and energy needs movement.
Yes.
And so we're forgetting to, play and bring the play back into it and move this body and move the energies and stuff like that. So that's what the nervous system needs a lot. So when you're activated, movement is necessary. It's not always being able to sit. Sometimes you need to move to create that space so you're not bombarded by it.
Yeah. And we're going to wrap up now.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that a lot of the stuff that we talked about on the nervous system and individuals is the same for the collective. Right. Yeah. So stepping out of that comfort zone and trying, banking at home, or, the examples you gave, or homeschooling or whatever, it's so incredibly scary to the individuals, which make up the collective. So you and I can hold the space of love without the judgment and just say, like, we're here for you. So what is it that you would like to do that feels really uncomfortable? And what's coming through your heart and your soul that's saying, like, I know I want to try this, but then the whole collective is saying, no. Great. Because 2020 really showed us that a lot of systems need to be reborn and reimagined. And so let's help you kind of just have the courage to just do little baby steps, little turtle steps, a little bit at a time. Like, we started a podcast interview when I was just doing it for fun. I literally was doing it for fun when we met in the Facebook group 6 months ago, or maybe it was like 9 months ago. And here we are, after me doing 50 interviews in 2 months for fun. Now I can sit and do these when they're official and recorded. No problem. And so it just takes a little steps. And thank you so much for being a beautiful mirror of love and light and wisdom, and for speaking so eloquently and clearly. And I'm very honored to have you on the podcast. And I'm glad that it worked out as a second round, because it was incredibly beautiful for me. And I hope it was for you too.
Thank you for having me. And it was beautiful.
All right. Signing off. Thanks, everyone.